This is the CAMMUS C5 steering wheel, a truly unique design in the world of sim racing wheels. Most wheels have an external motor that mounts to your sim rig and then a wheel that slaps onto that motor. But with the C5, it's like that moment in Galaxy Quest.
But the animal is inside out.
I heard that.
And it exploded.
And just like that unfortunate alien, the power in the C5 is built right into the wheel itself, hidden behind a sleek carbon fiber cover. This creates the smallest profile force feedback wheel I've ever seen, measuring just 67 millimeters from the front of the wheel to the back of the base. It's like turning the whole sim racing setup inside out. This is the Simpit. I'm your host, Sean Cole, and today we are checking out something truly unique or amazing in the world of sim racing. This is the CAMMUS C5 steering wheel system, and this wheel has me questioning everything I know about direct drive technology. The CAMMUS C5 is a steering system, not just a wheelbase or not just a wheel rim. This is an all-in-one, everything you need, no quick release involved. And the C5 goes for somewhere between $250 and $300 depending on your region and where you're buying it. And that makes it the least expensive direct drive steering system on the market by a pretty big margin. So what do you get for your money? From the moment you start unboxing the C5, it almost feels like unboxing a wheel rim rather than an entire system. That is, except for the noticeable weight difference. This thing is about 10 times heavier than even the original Fanatic BMW rim. And considering this is an all-in-one setup, it is impressively compact. I mean, all of this is basically the size of a steering wheel on its own. In addition to the steering wheel system, you get an instruction manual, a power cord, a USB cable, a tiny little fan, like the ones on my 3D printer, which is kind of weird, and I'm not even sure what to do with that, a power supply, and some hardware. Oh, and two small mounting brackets, which I do have installed here. So let's take a look at the C5 and see what it's made of, and it is a very unique design. You can see that immediately. It is such an unusual looking wheel when comparing it to others on the market. I mean, right off the bat, look at this gigantic central hub area. This entire area, front and back, is made of metal, with the front being aluminum for sure, and you can tell by that silver machined edge on the front surrounding the carbon fiber. Inside this beast is a 5 Newton meter motor, and this central hub rotates around it, making it almost like a lazy Susan. The front plate of the central hub is carbon fiber, and what's really cool is the way they machined it into this aluminum, so it's very flush and a really good, nice fit. And then on top of that, you've got this cool 3-digit display, which is both a speedometer and a gear indicator. It lights up in a color blue, and it is adjustable in its brightness. And then you've got a 10-digit LED display, which they have some preset colors for, or you can customize your own. Beyond that, there are 20 gamer-style buttons on the wheel, with at least 8 per hand in close distance to the rim, and another 4 placed in the middle. There are also 3 encoder-style knobs with 12 positions and black plastic caps. Now, not only do we have no quick release, so we can't remove the wheel from the base, but we also have a fixed mounted steering wheel, so this cannot be changed out. This is a permanent wheel for the C5 setup. It's 280 millimeters, measuring it from left and right. It is a round rim with a flat bottom and double-stitched leather material of some sort. It does have a good feel and a good quality to it, and no ergonomics. It's almost perfectly round, actually. On the back side of the C5, we can see the paddle shifters. Well, that is, if you look really close, they're so tiny. These little made-of-metal magnetic release paddle shifters, they're definitely not going to get in your way. You can barely even notice them unless you search for them, but they do feel good and they are very rigid, no flex to them. Also on the back side, we have a spot for a fan plug-in for that weird fan that we got. We've got a USB plug to go into the computer. We've got the power cord for the power supply, and then an on and off power button as well. And then you can see the vents that are there to cool that internal motor inside the C5 base. In addition to that, there are 4 threaded holes on the back to mount these brackets to. This is the bracket that comes with it. We'll talk about installing that in just a moment. And that pretty much takes you through the C5 base and all of its features. It has a lot of features. You can see it's super duper unique, one-of-a-kind wheel. So now we're going to get it mounted onto our rig, download some software, and get out on track. All right, before we can hit the track, we're actually going to have to get this thing mounted up to our rig. And the first thing is adding these 2 brackets to the back, which is really basic. It's just 4 bolts, hold them right to that central hub. And from there, you just have to mount the mounting brackets to your rig, your desk, or whatever. And they did something really smart. I'm going to give CAMMUS a little bit of credit here. They went with what I would now say is almost the standard mounting pattern in our industry. The same pattern of a Fanatic podium, the Moza bases, the SimMagic bases, that being that 78.4 millimeters wide by 66 millimeters front to back. And 4 bolts later, it was firmly mounted to my chassis. Now, CAMMUS does make a desktop mount with the 2 clamp system. That will set you back an additional $30, but for anybody who's at a desktop, that is a great option. So now let's talk about software. Now, I have to be honest with you. When I first got this base a couple months ago, I did have a little trouble with the CAMMUS software and the phone app and the whole registration process. And that actually prevented the gear indicator and the rev strip from working. Now, luckily, CAMMUS listened, and with the latest version of their software, which you can download from their website quite easily, it downloaded, installed, and then it did the firmware on the wheelbase, and everything was working out really well, and it was that easy. Now, the software is kind of basic. You're going to find the basic adjustments that you would find on most force feedback steering wheels, and you can make changes into the way the encoders work, or whether it's a gear shift indicator versus speedometer, and of course the color of the rev strip, as well as the brightness of those displays. So you have a few options you can do, but it's something I'm hoping for, just like the update that fixed the wheel, maybe more updates to get you even more force feedback effects that you can tailor to your needs. But now with all that up and running, it's time to get down to some racing. So here we are with the CAMMUS C5 mounted to my rig, and you can tell right away how low profile and sleek this design is. And I think a lot of people are going to enjoy that. I think back when I was on a single monitor, and this gives you the ability to get that monitor very, very close to the steering wheel. In fact, closer than any wheel I've ever used in the history of sim racing. Another thing that's very noticeable right out of the gate is this gigantic central hub. So this giant round middle of this wheel gives me that effect of almost like a bumper car. It does not look like a racing steering wheel as much as it looks like a civilian car, or again, almost like an amusement bumper car kind of setup. The wheel itself is a 280 millimeter in diameter with a flat bottom round wheel, which is quite comfortable. The leather type material and that double stitching give it a premium feel, and the yellow top stripe is a nice touch for quick visual alignment, especially when like doing rally cross or other types of driving where you're really turning the wheel quickly and you want to be able to find that center position very easily. The display and the rev strip are actually fantastic. I love this 3-digit speedometer and gear indicator. The blue color is very bright, it's very clear and very easy to read even on the fly, and you can change it whether you want it to give you both or just speedometer or just gear indicator, and you can adjust the brightness. Also, the 10-digit rev stripe, I love that it is programmable, so if I want blue lights, I can make them blue. I want red lights, I can make them red, or any combination that I desire. And it's probably those 2 features that give this wheel the most race car vibe of its overall look. There are 20 buttons on this wheel, and they're all within easy reach. The feel is pretty solid, and they don't have a totally cheap plastic click, but they are kind of gamey. The placement is well thought out, with most of them right where your fingers naturally fall. At least 8 of them on each side. The 3 encoder knobs are definitely a nice addition, and they give you that different tactile feel than the buttons. Really good for like brake bias or traction control or any of those kind of adjustments. They do have plastic caps, so they don't feel super high-end compared to some of those more expensive wheels, but I do like the grippiness, and I do like the detent positions. They do have a pretty good feel in that respect, and they definitely get the job done well. Now the shifter paddles, are we even calling them shifter paddles? The shifter tabs, okay, they are tiny. They're almost hard to find at times until you get used to the wheel rim, and then they are right there at your fingertips, but they are the smallest paddle shifters I can think of. The paddles, the tabs themselves, they are made of metal and they are very rigid. So when you pull on them, they do feel rather strong and they have that magnetic click. So it is a good audible and tactile feel when each and every click is made. So there's no missed shifts. My only real gripe is the size of the paddles and they are very small. Now, one thing I will say is this wheel rim is a little small, coming in at 280 millimeters. Some drivers are going to really like that size. It's quick turning, and with it being mostly round, it works for almost any discipline. But some drivers, maybe more for NASCAR, are going to think it's a little bit too small and maybe a little twitchy out on road. And that's definitely one of the disadvantages of not having a quick release and other wheel options, or the freedom to unbolt the wheel rim and change it out yourself. As far as the force feedback goes, the CAMMUS C5 produces 5 Newton meters of torque. It's not the most in the industry, but it's a lot of torque for that price in today's current market. And at 5 Newton meters, I think you're getting enough force feedback to really be at that professional level of sim racing and getting the amount of level that kind of does produce the real kind of car effects without wearing you out, which is key as well. And you can definitely feel the road under your tires. The force feedback feels quite smooth and responsive. It's not overly harsh, but still gives you enough information to react to the track condition. So for example, you're feeling that oversteer, you're feeling that understeer, you're feeling those curbing effects and hits. Now, on the downside, you don't have quite as much control over those effects as you would with like an AccuForce or like a SimMagic or most of the high-end wheels of today. But CAMMUS is a new company and we've already seen them making upgrades to their software, so we can probably hope for and expect more control over those settings in the future. Overall, the driving with the C5 was actually surprisingly good. I'm going to be the first to admit, I was actually skeptical of this design. I thought, gosh, with all of this central mass, is it going to feel real slow? Is it going to feel real dampened or delayed? And the fact is, it doesn't. It actually works a lot more like a conventional wheel in terms of overall feeling than I ever expected. And it really is just the visual difference that is the biggest difference. If you think about it, that back base is mounted to the rig just like a conventional base. It's just sitting there in the middle of the hub of the wheel instead of extending out through a quick release. The compact design doesn't sacrifice performance and it gives you that smooth, consistent force feedback, and I haven't felt any overheating from the motor even though I didn't install the extra fan. In the end, it allowed for total immersion, consistent driving, and the knowledge that you're on that leading edge of the curve, or at least on that curve, driving something a little bit different, a little unique, maybe even revolutionary in the world of sim racing. Who knows what we'll see in the future. But overall, again, I was pleasantly surprised with the performance of this wheel, and when I take the price point into consideration, this is going to be one of the best bargains in sim racing. Well, in an attempt to simplify things, or at least to make them perfectly clear, let's go ahead and break things down with the good, the not so good, and the bottom line, starting off with the good, and that being great price, good construction, innovative design, lots of buttons and dials, compact design, good wheel shape and size, changeable color rev stripe, super rigid. And now on to the not so good, starting off with a non-changeable steering wheel, giant central hub, small paddle shifters, basic software, buttons feel like a controller, PC only, no console compatibility. And now on to the bottom line. The CAMMUS C5 steering wheel system is a game changer in the direct drive steering wheel market, and maybe not for all drivers, but definitely for the budget-minded entry-level sim racers out there. Its innovative design with that all-in-one concept keeps the profile so small and so light that it is ideal for like wheel stands or desks or people with limited space as well as budget. With a price tag that's hard to beat, the C5 offers great build quality, a wheel that's a great shape, and a plethora of buttons and dials to choose from. And with the additional rev strip and gear indicator speedometer gives it that racy feel, with the overall driving experience being smooth and responsive. However, it's not without its quirks. The non-changeable wheel rim and that giant central hub might not be for everyone. The paddle shifters are on the small side, and the software, while functional, is pretty basic. Now, for those who are looking to dip their toes into the direct drive wheel market without breaking the bank, the C5 offers a compelling package. It's a bold step forward in sim racing technology, and while it has its drawbacks, the overall experience it delivers is hard to ignore. In the end, the CAMMUS C5 offers something pretty remarkable for those getting into the sim racing market who are on that tight budget. As long as you know that you're not going to need to do any upgrading later. There is no quick release. You can't just buy multiple wheel rims and put it on this base. You can't even change out that steering wheel. So this is really not only an all-in-one, but it's a one-and-done purchase, which means as long as you know this is going to be good enough for the future, and at 5 Newton meters, it's going to hit those minimum requirements for being something you could run into the future. Now, I really would like to see some console compatibility, because when you're making something that is so tailored, so perfect for beginners, you really need to make it available on the console market, because that's where most of the beginners are. So as long as they have somebody giving them a path, telling them a direction, but they're doing it on a small space, limited budget, this is really a unique, cool option out there. So I hope you've enjoyed our review of the CAMMUS C5 steering wheel system. I'm going to keep calling it that. It's an entire system. And if you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe to the channel so you can find out when our next video comes out. And thank you for watching. This is the Simpit. I'm Sean Cole, and I'll see you on the track.